Derry face Armagh at Celtic Park on Sunday at 4 o'clock. So we're looking at an Armagh team that just got promoted to Division 1. They beat Clare 118 to 113, whereas Derry, they finished third in Division 3, and their most recent outing, they beat Offaly 112 to 110. So how good are Armagh? I mean, they're in their sixth season under Kieran McGeeney. Have they finally started to make good on the potential that has seemed to be there for a good while? You even go back to, was it 2014, they got all the way to an All-Ireland quarter-final and lost that pulsating game against Donegal. It looked like they were on the cusp of something under Paul Grimley then, with McGeeney still involved. Are they finally making good on it?
Well, Shane, this is the first time that Armagh have been promoted to Division 1 in 9 years, which is a massive, massive achievement and massive progress for the county. When you consider 3 years ago, they were in Division 3 and they were struggling at the bottom of Division 3 after a couple of league games. And this is a team that McGeeney has been building since 2017. Probably back then, Shane, what you probably would have found was that the team were very naive. They were very gung ho. They were very much playing football on the front foot, kicking the ball an awful lot. We're obviously probably game management wise, they were probably losing games when they shouldn't have been losing games. But I think over the last 3 years, they've made massive progress. I would speak to a lot of Armagh people because obviously living in Newry, people would, half the town would be Armagh and half the town would be down. And speaking to quite a few Armagh people recently, and they would still be quite critical of the team. And I can't see that. And I think there's a little element of Down in this as well, Shane. Down fans would be a little bit critical of Down, and it probably goes back to expectations of, you're still remembering past glories of 91 and 94, and you don't really look at the current situation and look at the current team and think, will we be good enough to be winning All Irelands? No, we're probably not. And I think Armagh have the same problem, that a lot of Armagh fans are still thinking of that golden era of when McGeeney played himself, of the noughties, where they dominated Ulster football along with Tyrone, where they contested All Ireland finals, All Ireland semi-finals, All Ireland quarterfinals. And those days have sort of slipped away from them recently. And what Geezer's done over the last number of years is he's rebuilt the team. He's rebuilt the team from scratch. And if you look at it now, like the likes of the two O'Neills, Rion and Oshin, Jordy O'Byrne's, sprinkle in the experience of Stephen Campbell from Clanagale and Jamie Clark. Rory Guggen's a class act. Guggen's a class act along with Fokker. Like he's blended a lovely bit of experience with youth. And what they have now, Shane, is they've got a serious scoring threat from everywhere. Like they posted 118 at the weekend away to Clare. And that's no mean feat to go to Ennis and shoot 118. It's no mean feat on a heavy pitch at this time of the year against a Clare team under Colm Collins, who is really well organised, who are always a very difficult nut to crack down there, So I would have massive time for the job that McGeeney has done in Armagh. I think one of the shrewdest moves he made over the last number of years is bringing in Jim McCorry as his number two. I know Jim personally. Jim would have managed Mayo Bridge here in Down. He's a long-standing sort of historical record in Down club football. Obviously, he broke the mould with Kilcoo as well. He obviously got them their breakthrough victory and brought them to a kick of the ball from winning Ulster title as well. But Jim, despite living in Rostrevor and despite people associating him with Down football, is an Armagh man at heart, and he's an Armagh man. And Jim coming in is obviously what I feel he's done, Shane, is he's steadied the ship defensively. I think defensively 2 or 3 years ago they were very naive, they were very open. My only concern is defensively that they're number 3 and they're number 6, not at the weekend, I'm just saying in general, their number 3 and their number 6 seems to have changed quite regularly. And that's a concern for me, Shane. When you don't have a real dominant 3 and a real dominant 6, for example, if I was to say to you now, who's going to play at 3 for Donegal on Sunday, you're going to tell me Neil McGee. Who's going to play at 3 for Tyrone, Ronan McNamee? Who's going to play at 3 or 6 for Armagh? You actually don't know, and that's my only worry, that they just don't have that nailed on 3 or that nailed on 6, and the amount of personnel that has probably gone through those two jerseys over the last number of years probably hasn't helped them defensively. But listen, there's no doubt they've made massive strides.
The week before the Clare game, they obviously played against Roscommon, and when I was watching, I was thinking Armagh in control here, look, a really good team, competent on the ball, dictating the play. But of course, they ended up conceding 3 goals and lost the game 3-10 to 15 points. So does that feed into your point about them maybe being somewhat susceptible at the back?
Yeah, and I think it's not even Shane probably well susceptible at the back, but for me it's game management as well. You know, I watched them last year. Last year they went on a training weekend before the season or whatever, and they got caught going to somewhere, I don't know where it was, Portugal or something, and they lost home advantage in one of their National League games. So Carlo had played on the Saturday evening actually, and on the Sunday I was at a loose end, and they had lost home advantage, but they were given the game against Clare in Newry. So I just took my dad down to watch the game. This was 2019, last season, and they played Clare and Newry, and they were 4 or 5 points up, playing brilliant football. Never looked like losing the game, and somehow, just as we were going out the gate, we heard this roar, and we looked back, and Clare had equalised. They got a goal and 2 points in injury time, and you left the ground scratching your head, thinking, "How did Armagh throw that away?"
Didn't that happen against Tipperary a couple of years ago in the league as well?
Yeah, and this was a regular occurrence, Shane. This wasn't a one-off. This was happening to them regularly, particularly through National League games. And I think some of it comes down to control and possession of the ball. You know, you don't have to attack every single time you have the ball. You know, and I think there was probably a naivety and there's probably a pressure to maybe play football the right way, play football in the front foot, and they do play a nice brand of football. But even if you look at Dublin, you know, Dublin do not attack at 100 mile an hour every single time they get the ball. There has to be occasions, Shane, when you control the game, take the sting out, grab a bit of possession, you know, just rest on it. And you can actually hear at the TV at the weekend when Dublin played Donegal, you can actually hear the Dublin players shouting, "Stay on it. Stay on the ball, stay on the ball." You could hear them shouting, you know, "Rest on it, stay on the ball, double switch it." You can hear them calling, and you can hear those things because there's no supporters now. And I think Armagh are learning, they're growing. I think their game management is improving, but that's my only concern, Shane, that from total control, heading for victory, that could just be snatched out of their hands in an instance.
And the teams haven't last met in the championship since 2011, which Derry won by 9 points. That's unlikely to happen here. And their last time in the league was even 2016. So they're not all that familiar, probably not the greatest rivals at the moment. But Rory Gallagher, do you think he's done okay so far? I mean, it's probably hard to tell considering the disjointed way that the league has gone. But probably looking to play a pretty defensive brand of football if going by the Offaly game. They seem to have a lot of men behind the ball. But with Shane McGuigan up front, they have a serious scoring threat.
Yeah, McGuigan's a lovely footballer, and you know, obviously Chrissy McKaig as well at 6. You know, Chrissy's a brilliant footballer as well. But look, backbone by a really good Slot Neil team, Shane. You know, but at the same time, for me, the issues in Derry have always been, you know, you've always looked at Derry from the outside. You've looked at Derry club football, and you looked at even Waddy Graham's and Mahara and all the success they have had at underage levels in this last number of years. You know, winning Ulster minor titles year after year after year, and obviously Conor Glass being home as well. You know, it's a big lift for Derry football. But the problem in Derry has always been the apathy between the clubs and the county board. That's always been the issue, and I think that's starting to turn a little bit. I think there's a lot more apathy towards the county board now. I think things are starting to turn. Rory Gallagher's a brilliant manager. He's a brilliant coach. He has proven at Donegal, he has proven at Fermanagh that he is successful. You know, he has proven at club level at Donegal as well that he is successful. I'm not sure that he is playing as defensively as people sort of would make you believe he is. For example, they played Down this year in the National League before lockdown, and I was at the game. And it was actually interesting because on that night, Derry were much better than Down, and Derry probably should have won the game. And ultimately, that game cost Derry their place in Division 2, and Down obviously got promoted. And Down got 2 late points that day to win the game by a point. But Derry led that game from start to finish. Now, it was a very much a game, a war of attrition. Down play a very, very defensive style of football under Paddy Talley. And every game that Down play is always going to be very low scoring, and it's always going to be cagey, and it's edgy. And, you know, they sort of concede a lot of kickouts, and they get men back, and, you know, they like to keep the ball for long periods and things like that. But that night, I just thought to myself, geez, you know, Derry were unlucky. They came out of Newry very, very unlucky. Down to their credit, dug that win out. It was actually a mark late on in the game. It was an interesting mark. And again, it goes back, without going off track here, it makes me doubt the mark as well, because it was a ball that was played 30 metres sideways, like, you know, a kick pass sideways, 5 yards outside the 45 to Barry O'Hagan, who caught it. And instinctively, Barry, thinking, put the fist up, took his mark, took his time over the free kick and kicked the winning point. And it's probably a terrible way to lose a game, but it's within the rules, unfortunately, at the minute. But so going back to Derry, I do believe that Derry, this could be a tricky game for Armagh. Gallagher will have Derry really well organised. They're obviously coming in, relatively under the radar, Shane. There's been no hullabaloo about them over the last few weeks, but they beat Longford in Derry comfortably, and they beat Offaly, and Offaly are a dogged side. Offaly were scrapping to stay up as well. So this will be a difficult game for Armagh, a very difficult game for Armagh. The problem that Armagh and Derry both have is that whoever wins this game is going to be facing the winners of Tyrone and Donegal.